friends, it's Friday Fright night again, isn't it? Comes round quickly, and this time it's all about old Reekie itself, Edinburgh, yes. And we've got the old ghost bus back out, the virtual ghost bus. It's been great fun as always researching and creating this. This is 2 weeks it's took me again to create this, so please give generously to the tip jar if you can. It's the only thing that's keeping us going and keeping us sane while we can get back to normal. There's been some developments this week in theatre, well, in some parts of the country, but because of the local lockdown here in Manchester and the surrounding area it doesn't apply. But some theatres can open from tomorrow for indoor and outdoor performances, but the socially distanced, limited audiences that don't move around, that don't move from location to location. So my performances are all about movement and going through, even indoors, it's about moving from room to room. So things are moving in the right direction. They reckon it's going to be November when we'll be able to continue with theatre without social distancing, so we shall see what happens. So this is all we can do for now, is to keep our spirits up, raise our spirits, keep money coming in via your generosity. And I can't thank you enough. So if you can donate, doesn't matter how little you can, it's all on the virtual tip jar. You can donate via PayPal or via any debit or credit card. So I hope you enjoy the performance, and over to Flecky.
It's Flecky, it's Friday, it's Flecky Bennett Friday, it's Flecky, it's Friday, it's Flecky's Fright night.
Hello everybody, hello my friends, how are you all doing tonight? Welcome to our virtual ghost bus, and this time round Edinburgh, old Reekie. Oh yes, but before we get on the bus, thank you for joining me outside the wonderful Frankenstein bar. Ooh, perfect for any kind of ghostly walks or ghost bus, isn't that? What a meeting point that is. Now, some of you may remember when I did the Paris Ghost Bus, I talked about how the world's first themed bars and nightclubs were on the Pigalle. And we had the Tavern of the Dead, we had the Heaven and Hell, the Ciel, the Enfer, all them different nightclubs. And I told you about the Ciel, which was the heaven one, where people would sit in like a cave sort of thing with gold all over the walls, and God would come down on a cloud every half an hour and sprinkle confetti on the audience, then go back up again. Well, here in old Reekie in Edinburgh, inside this bar we're going to go in now and have a drink. It's absolutely wonderful. It's a themed bar like no other. So, I hope you've got your whiskies. I'm not a whiskey drinker, by the way, but I thought I'd take part tonight, have a wee dram. Apparently you have it with water and a bit of ice. So, here's a wee dram. Cheers, everybody. Let's have a quick walk inside the Frankenstein bar before we get on the bus. Here we go. Let's go in. Come on. Feed my Frankenstein. What do you think of that? What a great bar, isn't it? And every 2 hours, that show, Frankenstein comes down from the ceiling, and I'll be there every night. Cheers, everybody. So we better leave this pub now before we get into trouble with Bugger Lugs. She's waiting just round the corner. Let's go and find her. Come on, let's go. Come on, come on, come on. She's waiting for us now. Come on, let's get on. Come on, get on board. Everybody on. Come on. Come on now. Ah, we're on board. Hey, how you doing, everybody? You all right? So, Bugger Logs, are you ready to set off?
Yeah, where have you all been?
We've not been anywhere, have we?
Well, you were supposed to be here about 7 minutes ago, so...
Oh, no. I was just looking for my audience. I found them. We're on the bus now.
Been drinking, have you? Leading them astray. I can smell it on you.
Oh, there's a few scoops tonight on our way around, yes. So, we're outside our first pub now. And we're outside Greyfriars Bobby pub. And if you look out your window, let's have a look out the window, everybody. You'll see a wonderful statue. It's the most popular statue in Edinburgh, and for good reason. And I'm glad it is as well, because I'm a dog lover. I know most of you are dog lovers, and they are man's best friend, aren't they? And that one was the best man's best friend ever. And that dog is called Greyfriars Bobby. And just behind the bus where you've got on tonight is Greyfriars pub, but just behind that is the massive graveyard in the centre of the old town, called Greyfriars Kirkyard. We're going to go in there in a few minutes. We're going to have a wander around inside. You're going to get off the bus and wander around a bit tonight sometimes. So yes, Greyfriars Bobby, the most popular statue here, and one of the most popular stories in Edinburgh. You probably all heard of it. I think there was a Disney film of it as well. But the real story was that there was a man called John Gray in the 1850s. John Gray was hired by the police to be a watchman inside the graveyard, you know, to stop grave robbers and people like that. He was on the graveyard shift, thank you all, and he was employed to keep his eye out as a watchman. Anyway, it was a lonely, cold, freezing existence being sat in the graveyard overnight, as you can imagine, so he got himself a little puppy. He got himself little Bobby. Oh, and they loved each other with a passion, and they never left each other's sides for 2 years, and that's when John Gray tragically died. And he was buried in Greyfriars churchyard, and little Bobby was absolutely devastated, distraught, didn't know what to do, and he never left his owner's grave. So every night, little Bobby would lie on his owner's grave and fall asleep. We're not just talking for 1 or 2 nights, we're talking for 14 nights. Now I've worked that out for human and dog years, that's 70 odd years. 70 odd years he led on his dead owner's grave.
14 nights?
14 years. What, and 70 odd?
You said 14 nights.
Did I say 14 nights? I do apologise.
Oh, been drinking, have you?
I've got another sip. I've got the other sip. 14 years. Great, thank you. Greyfriars Bobby fell asleep on his owner's grave for 14 years. That equates to over 70 dog years. Is that right? In human, you know what I mean? Human years to dog years. 70 odd years he was there basically. Every night. And the thing was in Edinburgh, if you died and you left a dog, they were put down, you know, all stray dogs were instantly put down, but people loved Greyfriars Bobby so much that the Scottish RSPCA actually paid for his dog licence every year and even had a special dog collar made for him. So he was really, really loved by the people of Edinburgh. And when he died in 1872, that statue was made the same year he died, so it's been there since 1872. Let's have a look through the window again at it. And I don't know if you can make out, bloody pissing it down again in Edinburgh tonight. It's not got here yet, the rain, has it?
No.
Sorry, we are in Edinburgh, what we're talking about. Yeah, if you look at Greyfriars,
I've heard it's not raining in Manchester. I've just had a phone call with somebody there. As you can see, his snoz on the dog, it's very shiny. And that's because it's tradition to rub Bobby's nose. His nose, I'm said. Rub his nose and make a wish. And it comes true. So that's the most visited statue in Edinburgh. And so it should be. Greyfriars Bobby. And he's buried in the graveyard now next to his owner. And he haunts the graveyard. Apparently you can hear his little bark at night. So shall we travel now down to the graveyard? I think we should. Let's go. So we're outside now, Greyfriars Kirkyard. And just before I say that, I just want to mention Edinburgh. It's a really beautiful old place, but it's my favourite name for it is Audreekie. And that's because it used to stink. It actually still smells now, but it smells of hops because it's where the Guinness is made. Not in Ireland, but they make it, well, they have a big factory in Edinburgh. And the hops are brewed. And as you walk round, it smells like popcorn, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
You can smell it now if you sniff through the window. It smells a bit like popcorn. Excuse me. It's very gassy, isn't it? Whiskey and water for some reason. Anyway, so it was called Audreekie. That's A-U-D, Audreekie. And the reason it got that name is that people, it's always cold in Edinburgh. Even tonight, in the middle of summer, it's pretty chilly out there and pretty wet. And people used to struggle for money and for things to burn on the fires in their homes. So they used to burn their poo, which made this black, smelly, evil, shitty smelling smoke, as you can imagine. And that's how it got the name Audreekie. So let's have a look outside the window again, everybody. And you should be looking at Greyfriars Graveyard or Greyfriars Kirkyard. Kirkyard is the Scottish term for a churchyard in Scotland. And this graveyard is regarded as the most haunted graveyard in the world. Oh, yes. So, let's all get off the bus, shall we? And let's go for a little wander in the graveyard. Come on, everybody. Oh, it's a spooky looking place, isn't it? Did you enjoy a little walk round? So that is Greyfriars Kirkyard that we're studying right now. And it appears when you're in there that you're standing on top of a hillside. But you're not really, well, you are on top of a hillside, but it's not a natural hillside. It's a man-made hillside. And when I say man-made, I mean man-made. There is 5,000 bodies buried under our feet where we stand right now, all built up on each other over the hundreds of years, the centuries, making it a hillside. It's got so bad that quite often bones are popping up through the soil as you walk round. That's probably why Greyfriars Bobby like living there for 14 years, knowing them bones every night, and his ghost is still there. But it's incredibly haunted, regarded as the most haunted graveyard in the world, and it's mainly because of this one mausoleum that's behind me. Let's have a look at it. It's right behind me now. Come on. There we go. So we're stood outside the Mackenzie Mausoleum. Oh yes, Mackenzie Mausoleum. Also known as the Black Mausoleum. And it's the most ornate mausoleum inside Greyfriars Kirkyard, and it belonged to Mr. George Mackenzie. Now, George Mackenzie was connected to the police force, and what it was, he tried to convert criminals and jailbirds to his kind of religion. And if they didn't agree with changing their religion on coming out of prison, he would have them murdered. And they say he's responsible for the murder of 4,000 men and women over the years. And he got this nickname of Bloody Mackenzie. Let's have a look at him. There he is. That's Bloody Mackenzie. So Mackenzie, even though he's such an evil man, he got this fantastic mausoleum. However, for hundreds of years, he rested in peace until in the 1990s, an homeless gentleman, freezing cold, wet through in the Edinburgh Old Town one night, decided I can't take the cold any longer, went into the graveyard, and it is the only one with a roof on, I think, if I'm quite correct. As I look round now, I can't see any other mausoleums with roofs on. Anyway, the door was padlocked, but he forced an entry into the mausoleum, and as he walked in, the rotten floor gave way. He fell down right on top of Mackenzie's coffin. From that moment, he seems to have awakened the Mackenzie poltergeist. Oh yes! He's incredibly active. 450 people since 1990 have said they've been attacked by the Mackenzie poltergeist. He seems to be a vicious and evil man in death. Now, the way it sort of manifests... Start again in English. manifests itself is by scratches down the back of your leg. And there's only for the bravest people, there is a little thing you can do when you're outside Mackenzie's mausoleum. Now, me and Buggerlugs went there. I don't know if any of you remember this, but we did this as a live, just for about an hour, last November. I was a bit bladdered, to be honest, but I went in there with my friend Alistair, who we'll talk about in a little bit while. But he took me to Mackenzie's grave, and he is a ghost walk guide from Edinburgh, and he knows all the history of it, and he told me what I must do. So let's have a look at that little clip right now and see if we can summon the poltergeist of Mackenzie. Yeah.
Try that there.
Oh yeah, try that. Yeah, you can see it now, surely to goodness.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Yeah, well, let me get my hand. Where is it? Sort
Yeah,
of.
you can see it.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, there's some steps. You can hear the echo actually. I mean, listen to this. Bloody Mackenzie. What was it?
Come up,
Come up!
come out,
Come out!
and show me your shame.
And show me your shame. I tell you something, Buggerlugs. Start the boss before he comes and gets us. Start the boss. Quickly, 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 quick. I think I need a wee dram. After that. If Mackenzie's following me. Apparently that's how you're cursing you. That's how you're raising. Come up, come out, and show me your shame. Knock, knock, knock. So cheers everybody. Hope you're enjoying yourselves at home. Now, if you were in Edinburgh tonight, like we are, if you got out of the bus, and this is one of the areas that you would love to have a drink round. This area that you're going to look at out the window now is called the Grass Market. Let's have a look at the Grass Market. And we're going to use the old magic windows again. Oh, yes. This virtual ghost bus has got so many features, including these magic windows, which actually show you what you're looking at now, and then they sort of change back and show you history. And we've got an extra surprise for you tonight coming up shortly. Oh, haven't we, Bugger Lugs?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Been working hard on
Yes,
this.
yes. We've been doing all sorts of renovations and alterations to this bus. But as you look outside the window, as it's clearing now, oh, yes, if you were down here, only just over 100 years ago it stopped, but if you were down here, it was either you'd come to watch somebody being hung, or you were actually... Sorry?
Hanged.
Well, whatever. Somebody being hanged. They were hung by the neck and hanged. Is that right?
It'll do.
They were hung and hanged. Right? They were hanged. So if you were down here, you were either being hanged or you were watching somebody being hanged. Now, judging by some of you lot, you'd have been down here. Now, it wasn't just used for hangings. They used to get lots of audiences. It was the best night out in Edinburgh at the time. And for starters, you had the people, the petty criminals. The petty criminals, like you lot out there. And you'll be put in the pillory. Now, for those that have been on my Stockport Ghost Walk, you know that I take you to a point where there was a pillory in Stockport. And they used to do this there. And I'm going to tell you what they used to do here. So what they would do is, for the petty criminals, they would staple... Well, let's have a look. They put you in a pillory. I love that. Look at that graphic I did. Look at his eyes. No wonder his eyes are going like that, I tell you. They would put you in that. They would shout abuse at you, throw rotten vegetables, dead rats and poo at you. But the best thing they did to stop you moving about was to nail your ears to the wood, which was known as, what's it called the Sims do to dogs? When they clip the clipping? Cropping. It was known as cropping. But the only way you could get out of that, they would leave you in it, and they would leave you there, and the only way you could get out, it's a bit like that film where that guy got his arm stuck under a boulder and he had to cut it off to get out. The only way you could get out of these is by ripping your ears from the wood, which would leave them all tattered and like flaying about like that. It's pretty good, that, isn't it? That's what they'd look like. They'd be all flapping about, all the skin off your ears where they'd been nailed, and then they'd slowly heal together like that. But for the rest of your life, you'd have all these bad scars all over your ears. And that's where they get the saying, get ready for this, earmarked. You know when you say, I've earmarked this money for such a thing or whatever? Well, them scars on the ears told everybody else for the rest of your life you were a criminal and you were earmarked. Hey? Up there for thinking, down there for dancing. I thank you all. So... that's what used to happen as the first course. And then it was the hangings, and hundreds of people were hung here in the Grass Market. But the most popular and the most infamous story was one woman in particular. And her name was Maggie Dixon. Maggie Dixon. Remember that name? Now, Maggie Dixon was a fishwife, right? Now, you've ever heard that term before, fishwife? She actually did sell fish to make a living, but fishwives were regarded as the most uncouth women you could come across. And you might have heard the saying, oh, she swears like a fishwife. Have you heard that saying? They were really foul-mouthed, uncouth characters, and she was one of the real gobby. A bit like the Owen Gorton. No, I didn't mean that. Very, very gobby, just like Bugger Lugs over here. She's not having that. So, yeah, fishwife she was, and she was also a little bit of a slapper. Oh, yeah. She liked to put herself about a bit. And unfortunately, by putting herself about, she had an illegitimate child. And after it was just been born, it died, unfortunately. And panicking, she decided to try to get rid of the body, and she threw it in the river. And the next day, a farmer found the baby. And other people had seen Maggie without her baby, and they put two and two together, and they sussed out that this was her baby. And she admitted to it. She said, I didn't murder my child. I didn't murder him. He died, and I just tried to hide him. I panicked. Because she was a fishwife, gobshite, and a slapper, nobody believed her. Cry wolf, if you know what I mean. So she was sentenced to hang by the neck until she was dead. So she was taken into the Grass Market. It was a really popular hanging. Apparently 25,000 people were there that day to watch her being hung. She cried and pleaded for her life all the way up to the gallows. And then this is what it looked like. So Maggie had the rope pulled around her neck, and as quick as possible, to end the suffering, they pulled a trapdoor and she fell through. Now, the first drop initially snapped her neck, but she wasn't dead instantly. She was dancing on the end of the rope, wiggling about, her legs it was called the hangman's jig. Now, if you were loved, if your family was there when you were being hung, they would pull on your legs. They would pull on the bottom of your legs, your family, to, fasten? No, what my word I'm looking for? Hasten? No, I can't find the word. Quicken? Yeah. To quicken your hanging and your death, your family and friends would pull on your legs. But she had no family and friends there, so she did the hangman's jig for around 3 minutes. Horrible way to go. Then you left her hanging there. Her motionless body was left hanging there for 30 minutes, which was the protocol. And then she was lowered into a waiting coffin, where a doctor certified she was dead. And then they put the coffin lid on and nailed it shut. Put her on the back of a cart, and then wheeled her off to the courtyard that we've just been inside. So she took him over to the courtyard, and as she was going up the hill to the courtyard, the people riding, driving, that is the right word, is it, for a horse and cart? Is it still driving, even though the horses? Yeah. Well, as they were there, they could hear this. And this. Well, you could be terrified. And then this happened. She sat bolt upright in her coffin, threw the lid off. Them two fellas, they scarpered, as you can see. And she was alive. She had survived the hangman's drop. She was rearrested again. And they said, by the law of the land, you can only be tried for this one crime once, and that you'd done your crime, you'd had your punishment, and it was God's will that you would survive. So they let her go free. But she did have a pretty bad neck. She was like this, you know what I mean? But all the rest of her life, she lived for another 25 years with her head like this on one side. I don't know if you've seen the Netflix series House on Haunted Hill, but there's a woman there with a crooked neck. A bit like that, I should imagine. But she carried on living. She got married. She became a landlady of a public house. She was a legend all over Edinburgh and Scotland. And she was known as Off-Hangit Maggie. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Off-Hangit Maggie, which basically means off-hanged Maggie. What a brilliant name to be called. And she survived for another 25 years. Oh, yes, indeed. And there's a brilliant pub across the road. Just have a look out the window now. And it's named after Maggie Dixon in the Grassmarket. Let's raise our glasses, everybody. It's time for a drink. It's a pub. Come back to me, buggerlugs. Cheers, everybody. Is anybody out there daft enough to be drinking whiskey? It's all right, actually, with a bit of water and ice. It's Madeira that does me. Absolutely bladdered after that Paris one. So, the last woman to be hung in the Grassmarket was Jessie King. And she was a baby farmer. I never heard that term until I started doing this research. They were also known as Queen Herods. Because King Herod murdered all the children, didn't he?
All the boys.
Yeah, but she was known as a baby farmer. And basically what that meant was, if a bit like Maggie Dixon, if you had a child out of wedlock, you could pay a baby farmer to take your child off you, your baby off you, and they were supposed to find a loving home and then they'd sell it. So they got paid from the person that was selling the baby, then they sold it on again. But they wanted quickly to get rid of the child because they didn't want to have to pay for food and stuff. Now, one day in the Grassmarket, a bundle of clothing was found on the floor, like a round bundle, and some kid started playing football with it. Then he thought it feels a bit weird, and they unravelled it, and there was a dead baby inside. And people got, sort of the finger started pointing at this Jessie King, the baby farmer. So the police called round, and when they called round, they found dead babies all over her house, or where she was living. They were in the cupboards, they were in the kitchen, they were hidden all over the place. She'd poisoned them with whiskey, she'd suffocated them. Rather than find a home for them and a loving family, she decided to keep the money and murder the children. So she was the last one to hang. And she did hang. And she wasn't as lucky as Maggie, because it did work, and she probably deserved it because she was a true criminal. So, my friends, them are the people. Oh, yeah, and in that area as well, raise your glasses again, my friends. There's another pub right opposite to where all this happened, right opposite the gallows. It's called The Last Drop. Is it called The Last Drop? Yes, The Last Drop. And they even say on their website that when you sit in there and have a drink, if there's a spare seat next to you, you're probably sat next to one of the people that was executed on the grass market from many, many years ago. Ooh, okay. I think I'll have a bit of dry ice for that, Bugger Lugs. I haven't got it out yet, have I? Let's have some dry ice before we go any further. There you go. Oh, yes. Ooh. So, yes, so it's a lovely area now, the grass market. And it's one of the main areas people go drinking at night. But it's got such a sinister past, hasn't it? So, Bugger Lugs, let's go off-road a little bit. Let's get behind the wheel. Let's shut off. Thank you. So as we stopped here, you're looking up at the castle now. Edinburgh Castle, the end of the grass market. It's a wonderful view right up, as you can see, of the castle. Unfortunately, there's not a direct route up to the castle, so we've been working hard on the virtual ghost bus since Paris, and we fitted it with a few extras. So,
Just a couple of alterations.
are you ready for this? Release the Valkyrie wings! Yes, we're now complete with Valkyrie wings. Look at them babies. Oh yeah, there's nothing stopping this virtual ghost bus. We can do and go anywhere. Oh yes, indeed. And let's have what you say. Have a look now what it looks like from inside your window, inside the bus. There you go. There's the wing coming down. Oh, I tell you, you couldn't make it up. Look at, I'm loving this. The Valkyrie wings. Oh yes. So my friends.
You lucky lot.
So, in the words of Phantom of the Opera, come back to me, Bugger Lugs. In the words of Phantom of the Opera, it's time to take flight. Are you ready, everybody? Hold tight, here we go. We've landed, you're quite right, Carl. I wish it was real. Well, it is real tonight. It's real tonight. The only thing that's stopping us is our imaginations. So, we've landed outside the front of Edinburgh Castle. And let's have a look at Edinburgh Castle. There you go, my friends. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful... Well, it's the main landmark of Edinburgh. And it used to be called... well, it's the castle, but it used to be called Castle Rock, which it's upon, and the castle used to be known as Castle Rock as well. Sounds a bit Game of Thrones-ish, doesn't it? And I found out doing my research that, you know the famous scene from Game of Thrones, the Red Wedding? Yeah? What's he called, the Martin? The guy that wrote...
J.R.R.
J.R. Hartley.
No, J.R.R. Martin.
Oh, he did jam.
I think.
No, J.R.R. Well, you know the writer of Game of Thrones, yeah. Well, there's a story at Edinburgh Castle called the Black Dinner, and he took that entire story and turned it into the Red Wedding. So that's a real story there. Yeah. So yeah, if you've been to Edinburgh, you've probably been up to the castle. Me and Buggerlugs have been to Edinburgh quite a few times, and only last time we went up to the castle, it was absolutely wonderful, weren't it?
It was amazing.
Well worth it. It's about 20 quid each to get in. There isn't any deals on it. You can usually get buy one, get one free in Edinburgh for most things, but you couldn't for that. But it's well worth it.
Yeah.
Because it's like a series of different houses all connected together. It's really
massive.
It is massive, and it's brilliant fun. And it's haunted, of course. But if you haven't, been to Edinburgh Castle, you've probably seen it on television quite a lot of time. Take it away, the pipers and the drummers. Ooh. Isn't it brilliant that? I mean, I haven't been to the Edinburgh Tattoo. I was saying to Buggerlugs today, we must go when we get a chance when all this nonsense is out of the way. We'd love to go to the Tattoo. But I think it's the same time, it's around the same time as Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So it's a bit of a nightmare getting accommodation because everything books up, but maybe next year we'll have a chance. But yes, we've all pretty much seen that on the television. We've all grown up with it, haven't we? It used to be on television every year, didn't it? And televised. I think it still is. Actually, I'm pretty sure it still is. So I think I've got that clip from the BBC's footage from last year. It's cancelled this year, of course, because you can't blow down your pipe this year or bang your drum. But yeah, the reason I'm showing you that is not just because it's very dramatic and it shows the castle off beautifully, but the castle is, its two most haunted spirits are two musicians, a drummer and a piper. So first of all, there's a ghost of a man. Well, they think it's a man because it's hard to tell really. But many a time in the middle of the night in Edinburgh, they can hear this drumming noise. A bit like, when people are being led to the gallows, that kind of a drumming sound. And they can hear it in the dead of night. And in the 1960s, they actually saw, there was a couple walking past the castle in the middle of the early hours of the morning, looked up and they saw this. And yes, a headless drummer drumming away on the battlements of the castle. Now, he's heard more than he's seen, but he's been seen a few times. And they believe it's the spirit of the drummer which was employed. Well, they had different drummers doing the job over the centuries, but that kind of drummer on the battlement meant that the castle was under siege. And they think it's, stone tape recording of what used to happen. So they believe that when he appears drumming, that it's actually foretelling of something terrible is still going to happen in Edinburgh. So I don't know if they started drumming before COVID, we'll have to see. And the other spirit, let's have some dry ice because we like to talk about ghosts. It's quite a spooky little character. It was a young piper. Bagpiper. Ooh. Now under the castle, there is many, many tunnels. And they discovered a tunnel that had been bricked up for many, many years. They knocked through the entrance and they could see it went quite a way back. And all the people in charge thought, too spooky for me. Let's get one of the pipers. And it was a young lad, he was only 15 apparently. And they said, what we want you to do, lad, is go down this passageway. We don't know where it leads. And you're going to play your bagpipes as loud as possible. And we're going to follow above ground and listen to your pipes. And keep following so we know where it leads to. So he started piping and hey up, piping, monkey. Piping, cheeky chops. Piping, pipage. Not that kind of pipe, but started blowing his pipe. and he started walking through the tunnel. So the people that had told him to go down there were all above ground. They started walking along, listening, and they walked along. They were walking down the Royal Mile, and they could hear it under their feet. Then it started getting faint and fainter and fainter until it suddenly stopped. They thought, that's strange, because they told him if you come to a dead end and turn around and carry on piping so they could hear him again. Sent a search party looking for him, and he has never ever been found. He's still down there. Indeed, he's still down there in that tunnel under the Royal Mile. And they say to this very day, at the dead of night, if you walk along the Royal Mile, you can hear his pipes from under your feet, blowing away. Probably looks a bit like this. I love that tune. Do you know what that tune is? It's that, you take the high road and I'll take the low road and I'll be in Scotland before ye. Now, I thought it's quite a jolly song, but it's not. It's got loads of different meanings, but my favourite one is that this young soldier died away from Scotland, and his fiancée came to retrieve his body and take it back to Edinburgh where he lived. And basically what it's saying is that he took the low road in the coffin. So he was going along. The low road was always a representation of the underworld as well. But he'd take the low road and she took the high road, and they met in Edinburgh again by the Loch Lomond. So it's quite when you know the history behind it, it's quite a haunting song. And that's the ghost of the Piper. Now there's lots of ghosts in the castle, and there's been some fantastic photographic evidence captured there over the years. We've got two crackers for you. So let's look at the first one. I think the scariest thing about this picture is the fellow in the middle, to be perfectly honest. What do you think? He looks quite spooky. And the way that child's looking up at him, like there's actually nobody here. So if anybody knows that fellow, don't tell him I said this. He looks pretty bloody scary. But if you look above his noggin, and almost where the child is sort of looking, there's a bit of a window. I think it's just a hole, actually. There's no glass in it. And let's zoom in a bit closer. And this weird thing was captured. And me and Buggerlugs have been trying to suss out what we think it is. To me, it looks like one of them, like a grotesque mask with a long, big, red, bulbous nose. The kind that jesters would wear. The kind of thing you see in the Wicker Man when they're all dancing around before they burn him.
Looks like a young lady.
Speak up a bit.
To me, it looks like a young lady's face with red hair, and she's got like one of them black veils on her head.
Now,
white ruffle.
Yeah. Well, I know that, come back to me, Buggerlugs. I know scientifically our brains are programmed to try to make faces out of everything, right? And on many of my performances in the underground and staircase house and stuff, we've all seen what look like faces in the photographs, but whether it's this thing where your brain tries to make faces out of everything, I don't know. However, there is no brain trying to make a face out of this next photograph. I'm telling you that now. This photograph, before you have a look at it, I'm building it up big here because it's bloody brilliant. It's the most analysed photographs by paranormal experts and scientists who've been analysing the photograph. They cannot find a rational reason for it. Right? So let's have a look at the photograph as it was taken straight away. This is what it looked like. Just sort of up at the walls outside and the windows. And then you can see somebody notice something in the top gallery. Let's have a look. Now, you talk about our brains make faces out of stuff, but isn't that a proper face? Isn't that a real person? We'll be looking at it, and I think it looks like it's got a ruffle around his neck. I mean, your first instinct is to say, well, that's just a person dressed up. But just look at the face. It seems to be that kind of old kind of face, which was only that kind of face back in the day, really. It's really quite fascinating. And if it's baffled all the scientists and the parapsychologists, they don't believe it's somebody dressed up. So that is a wonderful, wonderful picture, isn't it? Wish I'd have captured that. You could probably make a bloody fortune selling that to the papers. So a bit of dry ice. Oh, let's turn my machine back on. Now, also the castle, one of its most famous spirits is a witch that haunts the dungeon area. And I'm going to find a name. Just bear with me a moment. Because witches were a massive problem. I'm just going to find a name. I've just forgot it. Just bear with me a minute. Oh, yes. Her name was Agnes. Agnes the Witch, right? And let me just tell you about witches in Scotland. Now, there's a famous place called Salem, isn't there, in America? And the Salem witch trials. And there was only 180 odd witches on trial in Salem, yet it's got this reputation all over the world. Yet in Scotland, around the same time, there was 4,000 to 6,000 witch trials and 300 witches burnt outside the castle. But this one in particular, Agnes the witch, she'd been seen throwing live cats into the sea. Now, I'm a cat lover myself, you know, and I don't condone that at all. She was throwing him in there, allegedly trying to sink ships, putting a curse on the armadas and stuff like that. And then she was found buying body parts and grinding them down to make, you know, powders and stuff for spells. And then apparently she was getting dead babies and using oil from their skin. So she sounds like she was a right dodgy character. That was Agnes. So she spends quite a lot of time in the dungeon, and then burning a witch is pretty bad, but they gave her something called throwing. Throwing. That's, you know, as in throwing something, but not actually throwing something. What they would do is tie like an old, you know, them like ropes that they have on old ships where you tie knots in, one of them round her head. So right round the top of her head here. Then at either side they would pull it tighter and tighter and tighter until the skull cracked and her brain popped out. Out it shot. So that was a proper nasty ending for Agnes. And she's supposed to haunt the dungeon area of the castle to this very day. But, yes, 300 of these alleged witches were burnt outside. Let's have a look what that would have looked like. There's the witch being burnt. And that's the area where we're parked the bus right now. That's the area where they used to burn the witches. It was a bloody good night out, I can tell you. Very warm. It needs that warmth. No wonder they burnt so many witches, because it's always pretty freezing. If they weren't burning the poo, they were burning witches. Or women alleged to be witches. So, yes. Now, a few years ago, only 40 years ago, there was some kind of... They were thinking, well, how can we commemorate these poor women that were burnt as witches? So they made a water fountain, which is on a wall right near the area where the witches would have been burnt. But the ironic thing is, let's have a look at it. The ironic thing is it's made from cast iron.
Ionic.
I know, ironic is it's made from cast iron. Now, you lot that have been on my staircase house know that I talk about how they used to repel witches with witch bottles, and the main ingredient that witches were terrified of was iron. Iron nails, iron pins, iron. So to make a tribute for them from iron, it's a bit not very well researched in my idea. But yeah, it's now used as a plant pot. But many people photograph it, and it's a tribute to the 300 innocent women, really, that died, apart from Agnes, because she sounds a bit of a nasty character throwing cats in the sea. But the other ones are probably just medicine women. So, shall we have a ride down the Royal Mile? Come on, let's have a little drive. Come on, Bubba Lunch. So on the Royal Mile where we stopped right now, I just want you to have a look out of the window on the right. And there is a marvellous, marvellous hotel, restaurant, bar. And it's called the Witchery. Wonder why it's called that, Buggles? Any idea?
Something to do with wizards?
Something to do with wizards, yeah, no. Witchery. And on TripAdvisor, they rate it as one of the best hotels in the world. And it's absolutely magical. Just flick through the bedrooms. You've got to have a look at it. Just have a look. Now, when I say bedrooms, they are suites. So you've got like chairs, tables, a fireplace you can sit around before you go to bed. Emma's just going to flick through them. You flick through them, Buggerlugs, as I just tell them about, look at it, the Witchery. And I would love to stay there. I'd love to take little Buggerlugs there. So tip generously if you can, because we're going to need quite a lot of tips. Because a night in one of these suites starts at £400 a night and raises to £500 a night. It's a bit out of our price range. You can go in there, that's a restaurant part, what you're looking at now, and they sometimes do afternoon, early evening meals at 2 courses for 30 quid or whatever, so that's pretty cheap for them. But I would love to stay in the Witchery, wouldn't you, Buggerlugs?
Certainly would.
It looks absolutely fantastic, doesn't it, the Witchery? And they're doing that eat out to help out in the restaurant there at the moment, so if you are in Edinburgh, now's your chance to take advantage of that, because the food is meant to be wonderful as well. And the bar, so cheers everybody. Oh. Yes, when we go to Edinburgh, we stay at a place called the Oldie Travelodgy. Oh yeah, it's a very classy establishment. £29 a night, I think you. Won't be able to afford it this year, so please give generously.
Trave Lodge.
Trave Lodge. So, my friends, let's get back on let's start the bus again, Buggerlugs, and let's go to another, public house. One of my favourites. Woo. We've arrived at the Deacon Brodie Public House. Have a look out your window. Cheers, everybody. Raise your glasses. Have a look at the Deacon Brodie. There it is. A wonderful public house. A real old school type of pub. Cheers, my friends. Cheers. So, yes. Come back to me, Buggerlugs. Now, Julie out there, Julie's just said that that previous bus ride was just the amount of time for her to go to the toilet. But she's on the bus tonight, right? She's on the bus behind me. And the thing is, we haven't got a toilet. So, Julie, where have you just been to the toilet? Right at the back on the one at seats, you dirty little bugger. So, we're outside the Deacon Brodie Public House. Let's have a look at it again, Buggerlugs. And yes, have you ever heard of the name Deacon Brodie? You probably have. I've heard of Deacon Blue, have you? Real Gone Kid. Good song, that. If you ever ring up Scottish Power, you'll hear Real Gone Kid over and over again.
Hello.
Hello. Now, some of you know what I'm talking about, Scottish Power. We're with them, they're very good. Deacon Brodie, that pub is named after Deacon Brodie, as you can imagine. And Deacon Brodie was a very interesting character in Edinburgh's past. He was a well-respected councillor, and he was in with all the the top people in the council in Edinburgh. He was well in with everybody, and he was a skilled cabinet maker, and he was a locksmith. And he got invited into all the wealthy people's homes in Edinburgh to build things for them, to do woodwork for them, and to change their locks and do all sorts. He was trusted. However, he had a sinister side. When darkness fell, him and a team of burglars used to go around with a spare set of key which he made at each of these jobs. He'd leave it about 2 months from doing the job before he'd go back and use his spare key to just let himself in, not break an entry, just let himself in, him and his gang, and then they would steal all the belongings, make their way out and lock it back up again. The perfect crime, you would think. Well, they got away with it for quite some time until he just sent his men out one night and they made a bit of a bodge of the job. And one of them was captured and he said, listen, we'll execute you if you don't tell us who's behind this. He said, Deacon Brodie. Deacon Brodie's the man behind all this. So Deacon Brodie heard what was going to happen. That he was going to be captured. So he scarpered from Edinburgh. He got as far as Amsterdam before he was captured, brought back to Edinburgh, and he was sent to trial. And even though he was well respected, he couldn't bribe his way out of it. And he was given the death sentence. So, again, it was a really popular hanging in Edinburgh's past. It happened on this stretch on the Royal Mile. And he was taken onto the gallows. And because he was a cabinet maker, he also got involved with lots of different woodwork projects. And he'd actually redesigned and rebuilt the gallows that he was being hung from. And the cocky sod actually stood there and said, hello, my friends, to his audience. And he basically said, these gallows I redesigned are the best gallows in the world. They'll do the job better than any other gallows. And you think, oh, it's a bit of a cocky get, isn't it? It's just about to be hung. Why would you be so cocky? Because he believed it's just out a way to survive. Now, the gallows was his woodwork side, but his locksmith side, working with metals, he'd made himself a metal collar, a thick metal collar which hid inside his shirt, which he was being hung with. So he believed that this would, he'd survived the rope around his neck. So he instructed his followers, his men, that soon as he was hung, leave him for a few seconds, then quickly get his body and whip it off. He'd pretend to be dead, and then when they got him out of the sight of the crowd, he'd go, ha, I'm alive, then he'd escape again. So they hung him. He was swinging from side to side. His men rushed along. He looked like he was dead. They got his body down, put it on a cart, rushed off with it. But he was dead. It didn't work. The collar did not work. They tried to revive him. Nothing could be done. And Deacon Brodie died. But his ghost haunts this stretch of the Royal Mile. He's seen on dark nights like tonight. Apparently he's seen with a lantern in one hand and a set of jangling keys in the other hand. And that is the ghost of Deacon Brodie, which haunts the Royal Mile. A really interesting fact is, for all you horror fans out there, that this character was based on Deacon Brodie. Let's have a look. Yes, Jekyll and Hyde was based on Deacon Brodie. He was a gentleman by day and a thief by night, and that's where Stevenson, I think it was, wasn't it? Who wrote it? Yeah, Stevenson wrote Jekyll and Hyde. That's where he got the idea for the character of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Yes. So that is Deacon Brodie. Put your foot down. Let's go to our next location. Come on now, let's go. So, my friends, we've now gone further down the Royal Mile. By the way, it's called the Royal Mile because it leads from the castle to Holyrood Palace, isn't it? At the bottom. And somebody just said there that, what's it called? Countess?
Contessa Deborah.
Contessa says that Jekyll is pronounced Jekyll. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Well, I like it. Sounds good to me. I'll go for it. Jekyll. Well, I suppose it is spelt different than a Jekyll. Yeah, I don't know. I like it. I'm having it. Jekyll. I'll stick with it. There's actually a pub that we went to, Jekyll and Hyde, wasn't there? Where was it now? Nottingham? Yeah, Newcastle, I think. Anyway, so...
It was somewhere.
Very good. Oh, Jekyll and Hyde memorabilia everywhere. And test tubes with the drinks. Another theme bar, you know. Not quite as good as a Frankenstein one here in Edinburgh. So, my friends, there is lots and lots of underground locations in Manchester. I'll say that again. Well, hang on. Let's not say that again. There is lots and lots of underground locations in Manchester. I used to take people down them, as some of you know. But unfortunately, our council in Manchester don't give a toss about showing you our history underground. But in Edinburgh, they embrace it. No wonder they get loads more tourists than Manchester do, because they really have embraced it. There's every ghost what you go on, basically you can go into a different section of these underground tunnels. But the best of all is right outside the window. Show them outside the window now. It's a place called, is it called Real Mary King's Close on that?
It is.
Yes. Real Mary King's Close. Now, it looks like just normal building there. That is the Royal Exchange building. And you go inside there, and it just looks like a normal... you don't know what you're going into, really. It just looks like any other normal building. And it's quite pricey. I think it's about £20 per person, but it's well worth going, because you will not see anything like it anywhere. As soon as you go in the building, it all looks very modern, because it is the modern part, and then they take you down this little stone spiral staircase, and then you just go into a labyrinth of streets. Now, I say underground, and I suppose it's the same with Manchester Underground, that it wasn't underground at one point. You know, buildings have been built up on top of things, so it ends up being underground. And Edinburgh was built upon the old bits of Edinburgh, and the streets are still down there, especially... And Mary King's Close is the best preserved of all those streets. Now, you're not allowed to take photographs down there, and I've never been able to get one because they're watching you all the time. But somebody snuck one on YouTube, and I found it, so not my problem, is it? This is what it looks like. Just look at that. That is what it looks like. There is streets underground that look just like that. Well, that is the street, not just look like it. That is the street. And as you can see on your on the picture, you can see a little window. There's a mannequin in there of a man. I think he's cobbling. I think, and all the shops are still there. Or you know, the old time. I mean, it dates back to the 1700s. So that's what you're talking about. They're really private about it. You've got to buy the official program and stuff to look at the pictures. They won't let you take any photographs inside. I think I snuck a few last time, but dead blurred because I did it really fast. So that is under the street there, and. It's been regarded as a haunted location since the 1700s. People used to say, oh, don't go down Mary King's Close. And the reason why it's called Mary King is it's just simple fact that a woman called Mary King used to live on it. And they named it after her. So they take you around all these little nooks and crannies underground. And you come to an area which is, it looks like a derelict house that you go into, sort of thing, really. You go from caves into houses. And you know a house where all the plaster's fallen off the walls and stuff, and you can see the wooden slats between? You walk into an area like that, and it's called Annie's Room. And it dates back, they only got the name Annie in the 90s when a famous psychic from Japan came along and did one of the first paranormal investigations of the location. And as she was stood outside the room, she went, I cannot go in that room. It's there's a little girl in there. I can't go in there. She's crying. She's upset. She wants them. She can't find her mummy and daddy. I can't go in. It's too much. I can't. Anyway, she calmed down, this psychic. Anyway, she plucked up a coin. She went in, and she held her hand out. She said, "I'm holding the little girl's hand right now. She's heartbroken. Her name is Annie." and she's heartbroken. She can't find her mum and dad, and she's lost her favourite doll. At that point, this psychic went back up onto the Royal Mile where we were parked, went into a souvenir shop, and bought a doll, a little doll, just as a sort of a little present, really. And then went back into that Annie's room, and the little girl said, "Can you put it by the fireplace?" So she led this little doll by the fireplace in the room, and the psychic said, "Annie is now at peace. As long as this doll is here, she'll be happy." And ever since that day, that story got out and it made news all over the world. And people regularly go in there and take dolls in. Let's have a look. And you can see there's quite a collection now. Me and Buggerlugs went in, and it is fantastic, isn't it? There's this shrine with all these dolls and teddies. I put a little girl there at the side if you can see her bobbing about. And I put that little girl's ghost there again because a few years ago they tried to do a bit of a stock take of them dolls to see where the original doll was that was given in the 90s. And it's been stolen. And she's been seen since then. That little girl of Annie. Her soul is at unrest again because that doll's been stolen. And that is Annie's room. Annie's room. You can find many paranormal investigation programme. Most haunted have been down there. There's about, if you look on YouTube, you'll find about 50 programmes all dedicated to the real Mary King's Close. And it's well worth watching because they go into them rooms and stuff. So that's it. Were you about to say something, Buggerlugs?
I just got the Michael Jackson song in my head, and Annie, are you okay? And then I started thinking Annie isn't okay.
Have you heard this?
I just went off on a little tangent. Hold me
Leave the comedies to the comedians. So that's Mary King's Close. Lots of underground locations in Edinburgh, but that is the granddaddy of them all. So let us now travel a little bit further down the Royal Mile to my favourite little area. Let's go. Oh yes, so we're now outside. There's lots of little, well, like we call them ginnels, don't we, or gennels, or passageways, or snickets, but they're called closes, a close. That's right, isn't it? A close. And my favourite one is one called, what's it called?
Flesh Market.
Speak up, I can't hear.
Flesh Market.
Flesh Market Close. Flesh Market Close. Let's have a look at it. I've just realised we live in Millwall Close.
Yeah.
They don't look anything like these closes, do they, that are in Edinburgh?
No.
Leave that on a moment as we look through the window. If you go down that, it's just wonderful. It's a little narrow passageway that's basically steps, and you go down it, and it goes right down from the old town right to Waverley Station at the bottom. And as you walk along, there's old pubs and all sorts of things along there. It's really beautiful. And it's called Flesh Market because it's where the butcher shops used to be. And there's a little picture for you. I'm not sure if that is from the area because it seems a bit too wide of an angle shot, that. But it does say that photograph is Flesh Market, Edinburgh. So it's where all the butcher shops were. And the Flesh Market is very similar to if you've been down the Shambles in York. The Shambles is where all the butcher shops used to be in York. And the reason is the Shambles is really narrow And the flesh market's really narrow because they didn't have refrigeration back in the day, so they didn't want to put shops where the sun would be on them all day. So they only get the sun when it's directly above for about half an hour each day because it's so narrow. And that's why the shambles is like it is in York, and that's why the flesh market is like it is in Edinburgh, to stop the meat going rotten. Now, most people in Edinburgh and Scotland used to go to the flesh market to get their meat, animal meat. But there is one famous gentleman and his wife from Edinburgh, sorry, no, not from Edinburgh, from Scotland, who definitely would not have shopped in the flesh market. Let me introduce you to Sony Bean. Here's Sony Bean and his wife. That's Sony, like a so and a knee on the end. Sony Bean. Mr. Bean. But this Mr. Bean is not as funny as Rowan Atkinson, I can tell you that. He got married to that woman. She's not a looker. She's got a face for radio. And, well, times are hard, weren't they? Times are hard back in Scotland in the old days. We're talking a few hundred years ago. And they decided, Mr. Bean and his wife, Mrs. Bean, to live in a cave by the side of the sea. And it's not the best idea because twice a day it floods. And but it was a very big cave with lots of little caves leading off. And they decided to make that their home. So Sony Bean and his wife lived there. So obviously there wasn't much work he could do. He could just catch some fish now and again from the sea, but work was hard to find. So he became sort of like Dick Turpin. He used to wait for travellers to travel through the area, jump out, rob them of the valuables. But unlike Dick Turpin, he wouldn't let them go because he didn't have a mask on. He had his face out, showing. He thought, oh, they see what I look like, so I'm going to have to kill this person I've just robbed. So he'd murder them after he robbed them. Then you've got the problem, haven't you? You've got the problem of what do you do with the body? Well, he had an ingenious idea. He used to take the bodies back to the cave, and you know that meat was very, very scarce in the days and very expensive. So he thought, well, let's give it a try. So he took his first victim to his wife. She said, "Here, love, I brought this home for tea." She carved it up. So let's have a look. She cut the bodies down the centre, pull out all the innards, and then she used to salt the meat, and she used to pickle the meat, and they used to make steaks. They used to make bean burgers. Oh yes, bean burgers out of them, and apparently absolutely delicious. Because they do say that human flesh tastes just like pork. So they were eating away. They were really healthy, and he was going out every day and getting, well, every few days, because obviously a body can last a while, can't it? And then when they got a bit low in the larder, go out again, get another person, bring them back. Then they started to breed, and they had quite a few children. And then their children started to breed with each other. It was an incestual relationship. It was a terrible situation. The caves were full of these beans. You could say it was full of beans. And, thank you. The caves were full of beans.
And when they died, were they has-beens?
Yeah, they were has-beens when they died. Out of the funnies. I wrote this script. So yes, these caves were full of beans. And because there were so many of these beans, they started going out in packs of beans. And they go looking for more and more people, and they capture them and bring a few people back at a time, these beans. Anyway, one day the bean pack went out and they bit off more than they could chew, literally, because they met a bunch of people that were out looking for the beans, and they were outnumbered, and they captured the beans, and then one of them followed one of the beans back to the caves, so that they found out where all these beans were hiding, and these caves were full of beans. And it was they'd done this for 25 years. They'd been pinching people off the streets everywhere, and the towns and villages, and taking them back to the caves. Nobody thought in 25 years to search the caves, and it was the biggest missing persons search ever in the history of Scotland. So they got inside the caves, the police, and they found all these body parts and skulls and stuff. I just want to say before that, when you go to Edinburgh, do go inside Edinburgh dungeons. You know, like York dungeons and London dungeons and Blackpool dungeons. Well, for me and for Emma, we've been on all the different dungeons, the attractions, and without a doubt, the Edinburgh one is superb. And there's a section of it where you go down really low into the caves underneath Edinburgh, and you get into a boat and you sail to Sony Bean's cave. It's brilliant, isn't it?
It's absolutely
And
amazing.
then one of Sony Bean's kids comes to the side of the boat, she goes, "Get off, my dad wants to meet you." No, that's Scouse, isn't it? I'll do that again in Scottish in a minute. But they drag you off and she goes, "Oh, you've got a nice big head. You've got a nice big head. My daddy likes big heads." And it's terrifying. They take you into this butcher's shop like in a cave. But I digress. Anyway, the actual people went into and found all the beans in these caves, brought them back out, the beans, and they didn't take them to court because it was so horrific what they'd been doing. They just took them straight to Edinburgh, and on the Royal Mile, they actually executed all the beans. So all the male beans, including Sony himself, they led them on the floor, and like they'd done to many of their victims, they chopped off the arms and legs of each of the male beans and left them there, just the torsos bleeding out. And they had all the female beans strapped to wooden posts, making them watch the men beans bleeding to death. And then they got a light and lit, just like witches, and burnt all the females of the Sony Bean clan to death. They were barbecued beans. Oh, come back to me, look, come back to me.
They didn't end up in the can, as
No.
Paul Oscar says.
Paul Oscar said they ended up in the can. No, they didn't. They went straight to being barbecued. Cheers, everybody. So, yeah, that's Sony Bean, a cannibal that died in Edinburgh with his family. So, quite horrific, that, isn't it? But you horror film fans out there, you may have seen a film and then there's been a remake of it, The Hills of Eyes. Have a look at it, The Hills of Eyes. He's a brilliant actor, that guy, isn't he? Yeah. We saw an interview with him recently, didn't we?
Yeah.
And that is not any kind of special effects on his face. He actually looks like that. I mean, quite tragic to be born looking like that, but very lucrative because he's made a hell of a career out of it. But The Hills of Eyes is based on the story of Sony Bean.
There is actually a film called Sony Bean.
Yeah, there is a Sony Bean film that's been out a few years ago, but it's not about the traditional Sony Bean. It's about Sony Bean in modern times. So that is Sony Bean. Now, he wasn't from Edinburgh himself, but he died in Edinburgh. But there was a cannibal in Edinburgh, and I'll have to get his name up because it's quite a complicated name. Let's just get it for you. Just one second.
Tell you.
No, because I don't think you've got it all, have you?
Yeah, James Douglas, Earl of Drumlanrig.
Oh yes. Well, I have to read this because it's complicated. It was called James Douglas, the third Marquess of Queenbury. Hey, you didn't like that, did you?
All right.
Hey, that's a godful, isn't it? So he was a titled man, well, a titled boy at first. Now this boy, when he was only 10, he was described as an imbecile. I'm not looking at you for any reason, Douglas. He was described as an imbecile. That was his official term. And a dangerous imbecile with murderous tendencies. Yes. So he was an imbecile, and he was a dodgy little bugger. Seems to put the Ormond to shame, this boy. And they actually had him under lock and key in a house which is now just behind Waverley Station, which is part of the Scottish Government buildings. Anyways, kept under lock and key. One day when he was 10, he escaped, made his way down into the kitchen, where a scullery boy, I don't know the scullery maids, but there used to be scullery boys as well, about the same age, 10, he was sort of the kitchen slave. The James Douglas, that's right, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
James Douglas slaughtered the little boy and then rammed a bloody metal skewer up the boy's ass, out through his mouth, put him on a spit and roasted him on the fire, and then proceeded to eat the flesh. He was spotted halfway through his dinner, and he was locked up for good in a room. And he was known as, and I love this title, hang on, let me just get it for you. He was known as, from that point, they used to say, oh, him, the cannibalistic idiot. Cannibalistic idiot he was known as from that day. Now, that building, as I say, it's part of the Scottish Parliament now, and it used to be open, the actual room where the fireplace was, with the spit still there, which he roasted the boy alive on. And, well, no, not alive, he slaughtered him, but where he was roasted. Now it's been made into a private members' club for MPs. So, did you have a look at him? You had a look at him then?
Yeah.
All right. So that's a couple of nice little stories there for you, if you've not had your tea. So, yes. Now, if you do go to Edinburgh, there is a fantastic tour guide. He's almost as good as me. I will say that. You know, I've been on quite a lot of ghost tours, but he's the closest to me, I think.
He is. He's fantastic.
He is. He's as close to me. His name is Alistair. He can't watch this tonight because he's a tour guide. He's allowed to do tours. I'm an actor, so I'm not allowed to. But he's out there on the streets tonight he plays the part of James Douglas, the cannibalistic idiot. And I went on his ghost walk, and then I met him in the caves after and had a natter with him, and this is me and him having a photograph together. And that is me on the good looking one. And then there's Alistair playing James Douglas, the cannibalistic idiot. But it's well worth going. If you ever go to Edinburgh, just send me a private message, whatever, and I'll send you a link to the website. He's only one of the tour guides that operate, so you might not get him, but I can ask him if he's on that night and say, because he's well worth going on his performance. He really is good. He's also the lead singer of a band called the Gorms, and they're going to play us out tonight at the end of this Ghost Bus. So, my friends, let us now go to our final destination. Let's go, Buggerlugs. Let's go. So, my friends, this is where we're pulling up tonight. This is the end of the virtual Ghost Bus. I hope you've enjoyed it. So the last story is outside this house, and it's called Knox's house. What's his first name?
Robert.
Robert Knox, that's right. Robert Knox. Now, how many of you out there have heard of the name Robert Knox? You probably haven't. And me and Buggerlugs actually went. It's a tourist attraction. It's only about £5 to get in. It's well worth it. And you can go inside Robert Knox's house. And I actually didn't know anything about him until I watched a film. A horror film. This will give you a clue who he was. Let's have a look at the trailer. Here we go. Right now.
Alright.
Defilers of the dead. Vicious violators of the innocent. Two of history's most diabolic demons, selling cadavers and corpses to the sinister Dr. Knox for his forbidden experiments. No one was safe from the bloodlust of these depraved grave robbers, these sadistic murderers.
They're both dead! And if you want to find them, go to the Academy of Dr. Knox!
Shock upon shock, terror upon terror, shatter the screen in The Fiendish Ghouls.
It's making me laugh. Buggerlugs has said some people have come out with the beans. We've got baked beans, runner beans.
No, definitely not runner beans.
Definitely not runner beans. Kidney beans. I think Buggerlugs quite good. Human beans. I think baked beans is quite good. I don't think it's as good as barbecue because they were burnt on a fire. It's like a barbecue, isn't it? So yes, you've just watched a little trailer for film, and I think it's got a different title. That was called, what was it called on there?
Fiendish Ghouls.
Fiendish Ghouls, but it's called the
Was it The Flesh and the Fiend?
yes, it's called The Flesh and the Fiend. If you want to look it up, it's free on YouTube. It's got our favourite actor in again, Peter Cushing Cushing, and he plays Dr. Knox. And
Did we not post about it? Because we watched it just recently.
yeah, well, I'll put a link on later. But let's have a look outside your window. And that's his house. And that is where Peter Cushing used to live. Well, not him, but the character of Dr. Knox. And Dr. Knox was a very loved doctor, but a mentor and a tutor. Now, in Edinburgh, there's big medical schools like there is in Manchester. And they always need fresh bodies to practice on. So you know where I'm going with this, that grave robbing was big business in Edinburgh, like it was in Manchester. And so people would, grave robbers or resurrectionists, would look around the kirkyard where we went earlier and look for fresh graves and try to dig bodies up as quickly as possible and take them over to Dr. Knox's house, and he wouldn't ask any questions. He was just glad to have proper bodies for these students to practice on. And it was getting difficult for these grave robbers because there was a man inside the house, in a little shed inside the graveyards, on graveyard duty, the graveyard shift, watching for grave robbers. Families would sit round their loved ones' graves for up to a week, so that they were making sure that the body was rotten or starting to rot before they left it, so it was no good for grave robbers. So it was getting... Oh, the best thing was in Edinburgh, in them graveyards, there's this thing called a mort safe, which is like a cage, which was you could hire for 2 weeks. They were quite expensive, so you hired them to put over your loved one's grave for 2 weeks, so you knew it was safe enough to take it off again and grave robbers wouldn't want the body. So what basically happened is Dr. Knox was getting all these bodies, but they were in different stages of rotting. Wasn't happy with them, but he still paid for them. Didn't ask no questions where they came from. Then one day he got a really fresh body. These two gentlemen came in. A gentleman called Burke and Hare. Two Irish gentlemen that had moved to Edinburgh, and they'd opened up, it was in a relationship with a woman that owned the guest house. So what had happened is, one of the guests in the guest house had died owing rent. So they were a bit fed up with this. So Burke and Hare had this genius idea, let's take this body to Dr. Knox, let's get that rent money that he owes paid back to us somehow. So they went along and he paid handsomely for this body because it was so fresh, it would only been dead about 2 hours. So Dr. Knox said, if you can get me more bodies like this, I really want them. So Burke and Hare decided, nah. So they were never ever really grave robbers. They murdered people for fresh bodies. And especially having this guest house that they were connected to, it's not on TripAdvisor, so you're okay. People would die there, elderly people would die in this guest house, they'd take them bodies along. But then they couldn't wait for people. There was one elderly gentleman who had a bad lungs and they were waiting for him to die. So they thought, let's fasten the process, make it a little bit faster. So what they did, they had this special technique where they would get their thumb, put it under a person's chin, and then over the nose, and hold the chin and the nose together like this, without speaking, so you couldn't breathe. And it was called Burking. It got known as Burking after Burke and Hare, so that's how they would kill people. Get hold of them and hold their mouth and nose together. Suffocate them. It was a perfect crime because there was no marks on the body, there was no autopsy needed, so they died of natural causes, and Dr. Knox loved it as well because it was perfect for his students to start chopping up. They did it to about 16 bodies within 12 months, and they got paid a lot of money for these bodies. And then the mistake was that there was a local lad. He probably was an imbecile, like it's been described before, and he was popular with all the people in Edinburgh. They used to make fun of him and he used to dance for them and stuff. Anyway, he turned up dead, and there was rumours going around that Burke and Hare had killed him. So the police got involved, and Burke and Hare both blamed each other for what had been happening. And then the police took Hare at one side and said, listen, if you testify against Burke, we'll let you off, we'll hang him. So he did. There was no loyalty between these two. They were both scumbags, really. So Burke took all the blame for all these crimes, and he was sentenced to hang, which he did. Again, it's quoted that 50,000 people turned up for his hanging, and there was no mistakes. He was hung by the neck, first time till he was dead. And then his body was taken to the medical school. Oh yes, where they enjoyed chopping it up. But not only did they chop it up, they kept the skeleton. And the students decided to take little mementos from the body. They skinned the flesh off Burke. Now there's a museum in Edinburgh, and it's called what is it called again? Come on, Buggerlugs, you know it. You went there, you enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it.
Surgeons Hall.
Surgeons Hall Museum. It's pretty gory.
It's amazing.
I couldn't take it. I think I'd had a few too many night before, and it's all pickled heads, real heads in jars and arms and legs and diseases that have been cut off people's bodies. I was gipping. I'm gipping now. But the main reason I wanted to go is because they've got a few things in there that belong to Burke. One thing is his skeleton, and that's his skeleton that's hung up now. I believe since last year they've taken his skeleton away and it's hung in a private area now. So I think you can ask to be shown it, but I think they thought it was a bit too gory. But not as gory as this next item. This is the main reason we went. It's a little book made from the skin of Burke. Oh, it's well worth going just to see that little book, and that's his actual skin. Ooh! So, my friends, I hope you've enjoyed your time with Flecky tonight on the virtual ghost bus around Edinburgh. It's been great fun. I've really enjoyed it. If you've enjoyed it, please give generously. As I say, there's no sign of me coming back to the streets or inside the locations yet. Possibly November. Fingers crossed, if we're not in more lockdowns. So please give generously if you can. It's been great taking you round. Raise your glasses one final time. Let's put an official raise your glass up this time, Buggerlugs. There we go. I'm having a bit more whiskey. There'll be no Q&A tonight. Oh, by the way, I raised my glass to Carl, whose wedding anniversary was yesterday. Spooky anniversary to you again. And David, it was his birthday yesterday, wasn't it?
It was.
So happy birthday. And any other my Fleckers and Fleckettes that are celebrating anything, birthdays, anything like that, cheers to you all. I love you all dearly. Can't wait to see you all in the flesh. Not the flesh market kind of way. Not Sony Bean kind of way, but you know what I'm saying. So my friend Alistair, who plays James Douglas, is in a band called The Gorms. And here's a little bit of him that we filmed last time we were in Edinburgh to see us out. So, you take the high road and I'll take the low road.
The high road and I'll take